Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Padjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Padjana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavajikacharya Ashtoto to the Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavajikacharya Ashtoto to the Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today is the appearance day of Sri Gadadhar Pandit. And if I can find what I'm looking for here, I'm going to read a little biography of him. It won't take more than 10 minutes, 7 minutes maybe. Okay, just give me a second here. And, oh, this is great. I'm sorry?
So they would have a festival?
No, it's the appearance day of Gadadhar Pandit. We didn't have any special festival, but it's good to hear about them, these acharyas, when they appear. And we didn't do that this morning, so.
Oh, you didn't?
Huh?
I didn't watch, and then it was pulled down before I could.
What was pulled down? The class?
The class, he'll put it up, he'll edit it. And put it
Oh, right. Yeah, he didn't. I may not have known. Okay, Shri Gaur Hari, that's Lord Chaitanya, had so much affection for Shri Gadadhar Pandit that he couldn't be without him for a moment. Just think about that. Lord Chaitanya had so much affection for Gadadhar Pandit that he couldn't be without him for a moment. Just to remind you, he's one of the Panchatattva. He appeared a year after Lord Chaitanya. Gadai and Nimai, obviously these nicknames, Gadai and Nimai were inseparable as childhood playmates. Peaceful, renounced, serious, self-composed, fond of solitude, Gadadhar proved quite a contrast to his bosom friend Gaur Rai, who was fickle, unsteady, and whimsical. In Gangadas Pandit's school, Nimai Pandit regularly teased Gadadhar by challenging him with illogical questions. Shri Kavi Karnapur states that in Braja Leela, Gadadhar Pandit is the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, Srimati Radharani. Gadadhar Pandit served as Lord Chaitanya's chief assistant during his Navadvip Leela. Sri Radha Krishna in Vrindavan appear as Gaur Gadadhar to perform pastimes in Navadvip in the forest groves beside the Ganges. And this next one is a quote from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. No one can describe the characteristics and ecstatic love of Gadadhar Pandit. Therefore, another name for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Gadadhar Prananath, the life and soul of Gadadhar Pandit. One day, while wandering along the bank of the Ganges, Gaur Sundar entered a forest grove and sat in a meditative mood. Soon he became enraptured, remembering his Vrindavan pastimes. To enhance the Lord's mood, Mukunda Dutt began singing sweet songs in Purva Raga. I'm not sure what that is, but it's a certain tune. Shri Gadadhar made a garland of fragrant forest flowers and lovingly placed it around the Lord's beautiful neck. As Sri Radha used to dress Damodar in Vrindavan, similarly Gadadhar would adorn the radiant form of Lord Gauranga. Gadadhar would also decorate Lord Chaitanya's bed and bedroom with sweet-smelling flowers. Every day he would make sandalwood paste to rub on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental body. Gaur Gadadhar sat on the roof of a tree, Gaur Gadadhar sat on the root of a tree, serving as a raised dais. Sri Nityananda Prabhu sat on Lord Chaitanya's right. Srivas Pandit decorated them with flowers. Sri Advaita Acharya offered arati. Narahari waved a chamara. Shuklambar offered chandan, and Murari Gupta sang the Lord's glories. Vijay, Mukunda, Purushottam, Madhava, and Vasudev Ghosh sang a variety of songs in different ragas. In this way, Lord Chaitanya performed his Nadia Leela. Now this sounds like the inspiration for that song. Kiba Jayo Jaya Gaura Chanda. I don't know if you ever heard it. Gadadhar Pandit also took the renounced order of life and went to Jagannath Puri to be with Lord Chaitanya. He was one of the devotees who accompanied Lord Chaitanya to Puri when he went down there. Nityananda was another. Accepting Chaitra Sannyas, a renunciate who never leaves the Dham. By the way, we've discovered after 50 years that renunciant and renunciate are both correct. When I started editing, we couldn't find renunciate in the dictionary, so we changed them all to renunciants. But now the dictionary language has changed, so renunciate is also legal. So when I write renunciate, I'm going to say renunciate. Accepting Chaitra Sannyas, a renunciate who never leaves the Dham, he served the deity of Tota Gopinath with full love and devotion. Regularly, Sri Krishna Chaitanya came to relish Sri Gadadhar's Rasika reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya concluded his manifest pastimes by entering the deity of Tota Gopinath. Although Gadadhar Pandit was barely 48 when the Lord departed, he quickly became old because of the intense anguish he felt in separation from his beloved Lord Gaurasundar. Gadadhar couldn't stretch his arms to offer a garland to his deity. Understanding his servant's difficulty, Sri Tota Gopinath sat down to facilitate Gadadhar's loving service. It's the only deity that's sitting deity. To this day, Sri Tota Gopinath is the only sitting deity of Krishna. According to some authorities, a short time after Lord Chaitanya's disappearance, Sri Gadadhar Pandit joined his eternal pastimes by entering his beloved deity of Tota Gopinath. His danta, tooth, notice how that danta, dental, same word. His tooth, samadhi, stands near the Vangshi Gopal temple in Vrindavan. A few wonderful pastimes of Gadadhar. There's more in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and other scriptures. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of April 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, text 10 on page 602. Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha. Padamalo. Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vagunanvitam Vimudha Nanapashyanti Pashyanti Jnanachakshushaha. Anyone online? No, Dhanabhari sometimes there. Utkramantam, quitting the body. Stitam, situated in the body. Va api, either. Bunjanam, enjoying. Va or guna anvitam, under the spell of the modes of material nature. Vimudaha, foolish persons. Na, never. Anupashyanti, can see. Pashyanti, can see. Jnana chakshushaha, those who have the eyes of knowledge. Welcome, Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Would you like to come to class, stay to class? We're having another class on Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Darshan will have it 8:15. 8:15. If you'd like to come back then, you're welcome. You can sit in the patio or wherever. and there'll also be prasad afterward. Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay, so we are on page 602 of the book. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Jnana Chakshushaha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge understood from the Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. I think, make that. As a result, he is experiencing different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, having given a little summary of the process of transmigration, beginning in text 7, Krishna is now saying that even though you may know this or suspect it, you can't see it, you can't recognize it, how it's happening, unless your eyes have been opened by the torchlight of knowledge, by the transcendental knowledge of the Vedas. So how did he describe, how is this transmigration working? This is the foundational knowledge of any spiritual practice. Krishna is teaching that first in the Bhagavad Gita, beginning of chapter 2. So he describes here, beginning in text 8, first of all, he described Mama Vangsha Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, the living entity is eternally in a fragmental part of me. Mama Vangsha Jiva Loka. Every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, meaning that we're like drops of water in the ocean. We're very minute, but we have the quality of Krishna in minute degree. We're conscious living beings, we have a form, we are by nature Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. But in our present state, we're certainly not eternal, we're not always blissful, most of us. And there's a million different things we don't know. So regaining that Satchidananda quality, which is our intrinsic quality, is what bhakti yoga or any form of yoga is all about. So that spiritual, minute, irreducible quantum of consciousness is who we are. And that animates the body with consciousness. The body, what's spread all over the body, Krishna says at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Avinashi tattvadi yena sarvamidam tatam. That which is spread throughout the body is indestructible. And what is it? Consciousness. Through the bloodstream is being carried, and it's all over our body. So, but our fate has been that unless we regain or we awaken our Krishna consciousness, then we continue to, Jesse, welcome. Grab a book. We're on page, what is it? 602. Text 10. We just read text 10 of chapter 15. So here he describes how this living entity is transmigrating. Next, text 8. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So we have two bodies. We have the gross body, which we commonly call the body, hands, legs, everything. But we also have the subtle body, internal body. Every one of you, including me, I also have a mind, intelligence, and an ego, a sense of self. These are the three different elements of the subtle body. There's the gross body, and then there's the subtle body. So that subtle body does not die when the gross body dies. What does it say? Nahanyate hanamane sharire. In the second chapter, text 20, it says this, with the sharira, this is the external body, when that perishes, the soul doesn't perish, nor does that subtle body. And so he's saying the living entity carries a different conception of life from one body to another, thus he takes the kind of body and again quits it to take another. Now how does he carry that conception? Those conceptions are in the subtle body. When we do something in this world, when we perceive something pleasurable, that creates an impression in our mind. And we remember that. We want to try to experience it again. When something happens that's unpleasant, that's also recorded. We try to avoid that again. So the intelligence, we're remembering, and the mind is directing the senses, oh, that's pleasurable, go there and we'll experience that. That's not so good, avoid that. Sankalpa vikalpa, desire and aversion. So these are all millions of impressions like that within the subtle body. We may call it the unconscious, but that's also part of the body, it's subconsciousness. So that consciousness, that mind, that intelligence, ego, that serves as the template for our next body. And we can lose the human form of life. It's a tragic thing. Because the human form of life is that juncture, this special state in which we can actually get out of this bondage of birth and death and samsara and suffering. Yes, there's a little pleasure here, but there's a whole lot of misery. And Krishna says in that favorite verse, is like the theme of this class, Yahi sangsparjita bhoga dukkha yonaya evade. The bhoga, the enjoyment that comes from literally sangsparsha, means the touch or the contact of the senses with their sense objects, that causes misery. Because it inevitably brings you back again. And that old age, disease, death, and birth, those are the basic sources of misery in this life. And we don't belong here. It's an artificial situation. But because we're in ignorance, we don't know our real nature, we don't know Krishna, we're bound by the three modes of nature and all the myriad varieties of impressions and thoughts and attractions and repulsions in this world. So yoga, specifically bhakti yoga, is a reformatory process which is very effective of purifying the consciousness and purifying our desires. Instead of being bound by all of these material desires that have been unfulfilled and causing us suffering, which act like ropes or knots binding us to this world, really a granti in the heart, we turn our attention to Krishna, who's all attractive. And if we learn how to serve him and glorify him, then the attraction begins to go to Krishna. And everything related to Krishna is a whole world there. And so that's what Krishna consciousness is all about. So, but here he's describing this process of transmigration. So the living entity carries those conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. It takes one kind of body and quits it to take on another. Then, the living entity, thus, this is text 9, previous to one we read tonight. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. And we can see dogs, cats, birds, they have eyes, they have ears, they have sense of touch and taste, they have these senses. But their consciousness is much more rudimentary. But still, they're trying to find food and something that tastes good, get away from danger. So this is how it's going on. And then when they perish, that body eventually goes, they come up. They graduate up to a human form again. Because there's no right or wrong for these, because the intelligence is so rudimentary. Only in human form of life do you have sin and pious activities by which you can go up like that. And the most supreme pious activity is service to God, service to Krishna. Because when you do it, especially in this movement, then it's also service to humanity. The prime benediction for humanity, the service we do, chanting Hare Krishna. And going out, giving the holy name, the books which teach the holy name, which teach the science of bhakti. That's the most thing pleasing to Krishna, and you find yourself also very pleased if you're glorifying the Lord and giving Him. So and you can imagine when you leave that body, you may actually go back to God if you're completely pure, but if not, then you take your birth in a human family, you're assured of a human life, and in a family of devotees or like that would continue the process and complete it. So that's what's being spoken. But this Shrotam Chakru Sparshananksha, now this word upasevate, I like to point out, some of you were here. Baba says enjoys. Again, this word enjoys, I think maybe in the Oxford English it can also mean experiences, but basically it means experiences. Sometimes you don't enjoy, you suffer. But thus he experiences a particular set of sense objects. Sometimes it's very painful. But anyway, this is going on, and upasevate can mean not only experiences and joys, but becomes addicted to. I looked it up in the Sanskrit dictionary. That's one of the meanings of the word upasevate. So you find like animals, they like a certain kind of food, and they won't eat anything else that is not in a certain category. And just like human beings, you become accustomed in a certain culture, and there's a certain kind of food, and other people say, "Oh boy, I'll never eat that." We have our own culinary, culture. So this is food, but also seeing and hearing and music. There's all different kinds of music. So this is what happens. This is what conditioning means. We're conditioned souls, is that we're habituated to a certain set of experiences, pleasurable experiences that form a certain culture. But all of that is part of what's called Maya, or illusion, because it pertains to things that aren't eternal. There's a famous phrase, I'm sure you know, asato ma sadgamaya, right? Take me from, oh Lord, please take me from the temporary to the eternal, from death to immortality, from darkness to light. It's a wonderful prayer. And that's really what Krishna consciousness is all about, is that we're trying to regain our eternal form and function. It's called swarup. There's a definition of mukti. Mukti is highly coveted. Mukti means liberation, liberation from birth and death. But liberation, this is like a negative thing, just like the United States, right? The 13 colonies became liberated from the UK, England. But that wasn't the end of it. Then we started the whole, stuff that we were doing. So liberation means be liberated. But what does it mean positively? So in the Srimad Bhagavatam second canto, there's kind of a little table of contents of what's in the Bhagavatam, 10 subject matters. One of them is mukti, liberation. So it's defined there. It's good to know this. It's a one-liner. Muktir hitbanyata rupam swarupena vyavastitihi. Very illustrative, and it's related to what we were speaking of before. So, anyata rupam. Rupa means form. So even in this one lifetime, we go through so many forms, isn't it? How old are you? 18 or so? 15. Okay. So you can remember when you were 6, 7, right? Okay, so you had a smaller body, a different mind, right? But you're the same person. So you're changing your body, even in this one body, and we all do. I can remember when I was 7 or 8 also, many, many, many years ago. So changing. So even in this one body, we're transmigrating. So these are called anyata rupam. These aren't our real rupa, our real form. They're just temporary forms that we're going through, and then we'll have another form in the next life. So here's, mukti is defined as follows. Hitva anyata rupam, giving up all these other forms and being situated in your swarup, your eternal form. We each have an eternal form that's present in the spiritual world eternally in relation to Krishna, just suitable to facilitate our specific rasa, our specific service to Krishna. And It could be a gopi, it could be a coward boy, it could be a cow. Everyone is completely, fully Krishna conscious there. Even the trees. When Krishna starts playing his flute and entering the forest, the trees go into ecstasy, they blossom and they bow down. It's not ordinary trees, right? These are kalpavriksha trees. So the spiritual world, everything is fully conscious. And we have our place there, our eternal form. And it's not this form. But we can prepare there by creating the internal form, by the mentality, the consciousness, the Krishna consciousness. That's what counts, is the Krishna consciousness. So this is describing, we have this ear, eye, nose, all these different things. Okay, and we have, there's 8,400,000 species. This word species is not exactly what you will find described in college. It means varieties, different varieties. Okay, now who can see that is the one whose eyes have been enlightened. I remember, I like to give this example from my own life. When I grew up in near New York City, in a place called Long Island. And we would periodically, my parents would take us into the city and we'd visit some of the museums. There's some very nice art museums there, Museum of Natural History, see the big, dinosaurs, who could forget. But the art was very fascinating to me. I remember they would have some Rembrandts there. I remember Picasso and some of these famous painters, And I would be, getting it, but all I saw I didn't see much. Just like if someone comes in here, they know nothing about Krishna, nothing about Ram, nothing about Lord Chaitanya. What are they going to make of these paintings, They can say, well, there's a figure, someone's teaching someone else, that's pretty good, they're pretty good, artwork, But they have no idea what it means. But someone who's a devotee, who knows what's behind the paintings, it's a different experience. Srila Prabhupada, he would actually enter into these paintings. He saw them as windows to the spiritual world. In other words, he would be really there experiencing, Ram Leela and whatever, Those are the eyes of knowledge. So back to my own little story. So at one point I said, well, I really like to know what's going on in these paintings. So my parents bought me a little set of books, and they dealt with, talked about different eras of painting in different places, Italian painters and so forth, modern artists and so forth. And so I learned more about, this is what this means, this is what he's trying to convey. So next time when I saw the painting, I was seeing with the eyes of knowledge. It had different meaning for me. So we're meant to see the world through the eyes of the Shastra. It's called Shastra Chakshu. Here he calls it Jnana Chakshu. Where is that? Jnana means knowledge. Where is the knowledge going to come from? It comes from the Shastra, and which means it comes from the realized souls. It comes from Krishna. We're reading Krishna's words here. But we're also reading Prabhupada's words. And Prabhupada will be the first to say that these aren't my words. I'm getting this from Krishna, and I'm getting it from Baladev Vijayabhushan, who's a very learned scholar who wrote early on, one of the acharyas, So we're experiencing through the sound, through the words, the association of Krishna and his great devotees. And if we take the knowledge in and try to live by it and see the world by it and see ourselves, then we're seeing with Jnana Chakshus, eyes of knowledge. So what can we see? We can see how people are transmigrating. Just like even in this life, you can see an old person, you say, oh, I see, okay, so this soul is now moved, 80 years through this body, but nobody's going to die. I had a little poem, if you'll forgive me, So you have to, I'm an editor, so there's a little trick. Every body dies, and separate, every single body dies, see? Every body dies, nobody dies. Wake up and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. She likes that. I was thinking make a t-shirt out of that, maybe. Okay. So, but it's actually based on a verse in the second chapter. Anta bandha hime deha nitya sokta sharirina. All these bodies, Krishna is saying, he's on the battlefield, he said all these bodies are temporary. Anta bandha hime deha nitya sokta sharirina. But the sharirina, the dweller in the body, the soul, is eternal. So that understanding is foundational. So, and in addition, if you really cultivate the knowledge, you can see how, as one gunanvitam, bhujanava gunanvitam, one is experiencing life according to the modes of nature, which is in the previous chapter in more detail. oh, this person is in a mode of ignorance. You can see, you walk through the streets now. We didn't have this for many years. Now we do. You'll see some poor fellow sleeping on the street in the middle of the day. We have the homeless. So it's a tragedy. This person is taking shelter of sleep to try to forget the actual situation he's in. It's difficult. So that's a mode. It's a mode of nature. It's sad. And then you see other people who are a couple are very young, pretty healthy and wealthy, and they're in San Diego. That itself is a sign that they're good. So there's good karma there. They're enjoying the mode of passion, whatever. So you can see, okay, this is going, but it's all changing. Nothing is permanent here. Everything is all changing. So this is how we should see through the eyes of the Bhagavad Gita, Jnana Chakshush. Okay. Any discussion or questions on these points? All right, let's read text 11. Yatanto yoginas chainam pashyantyatman yavastitam yatanto prakutatmano nainam pashyantya chetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. Purport. There are many transcendentalists on the path of spiritual self-realization, but one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the living entity. The word yoginaha is significant in this connection. Page 604. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called associates of yogis, but they are actually blind to the matter of self-realization. Sorry. Okay. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are called yatanto pyakutatmanaha. Yatanto pyakutatmanaha. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of the transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord, in other words, the bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service and Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. So this word yatanta means endeavoring, and a yati is a name for a sannyasi, because they're always endeavoring to increase their purity and realization. So this word is very important, because whether we're going to endeavor on the spiritual side of things or material, to live in this world you have to work hard. There's a hard struggle for existence. So endeavoring is what we do as conditioned souls. So, but if you endeavor with knowledge, then you can apply your efforts in such a way to really advance yourself toward the goal of life. Right? So that brings up one of my other favorite verses you've heard before. Labdva sudurlamabidam bahusambhavante manushyamārtatam anityamapi yadira turnam yateta napateta namityayavad nikshayasaya vishayasavatak. The word yateta is the same root, yatanto. So what he's saying there, this is Krishna speaking 11th canto, I think it's Bhagavad Gita. He says, Labdva sudurlam, you have attained the very difficult and rare to attain human form of life after many, many births. Because the transmigration of the soul is going up the different species. And finally, here we are in the human form of life. Labdva sudurlam amidam bahusambhavante, after many births, manusham, human form. Artadam. Now this is a very important word, artadam. Arta means something of value. And in this context, it means the supreme value. Sva-arta. The goal of the soul, because we have so many other goals. The body's demanding us do this, the mind is demanding do that, But what our real benefit of the soul is, that's called svarta, and only in human life can we know what it is and know the method to achieve it. So this is very rare. So manusham artadam anityam api yadira. But like all forms, human, animal, plant, they're temporary. The body is temporary. anityam. It's not eternal. The soul is, but not the body. So one has to be dhira. Another key word. Dhira means sober-minded, self-controlled, thoughtful. And with that understanding, which we get from association with the Shastra and the Gurus and the Sadhus, then the third line comes in. Turnam yateta, without wasting any time. Turna means immediately. We don't know when that final breath will come. Turnam yateta, one should immediately start striving for what? Napateta numrityavat, as long as the body hasn't died yet, numrityavat, nikshayasaya, the ultimate good. This word shreyasa, in this case nikshayasa, the ultimate good, we should strive for. After all, because in all the other forms we've been through, we've experienced all varieties of sense gratification, and it hasn't helped us one bit. It's kept us conditioned. So, vishayas sarvatakshyat. So, understanding how to strive for that ultimate, what is that ultimate good, and how we can achieve it, those are essential elements of knowledge. And then to be in the association where you're inspired to actually strive for that. That's called the Sadhu Sangha, or the Society for Krishna Consciousness, is what Srila Prabhupada set up. So that impetus, or that inspiration to strive. Now, it doesn't have to mean that you undertake, severe, difficult austerities. It basically means that you are ready to understand the knowledge, read the books, associate with devotees, and begin simple chanting. There's no hard and fast rules. I remember when I started chanting, I was chanting 2 rounds a day. I thought I was a great yogi. I was doing the hatha yoga. That was most of what I was doing in the morning before work. And then, I do the headstand and the stretching. I felt great, and then I'd chant 2 rounds, get in the car, but I would continue to chant on my way to work. It was good. It was a whole half-hour drive. By the time I got to work, I was, in bliss. It was at a hospital. And I had the illusion I could project the Hare Krishna mantra and maybe cure these people, So, anyway, didn't hurt. So, but it was, that was the beginning. And I became attracted to, the chanting and the philosophy. It was important. I bought some books, and eventually I said, well, this looks like what I want to do. And I joined. March of 73, almost exactly 50 years ago. So, and it's the same knowledge. I've been reading this book for all these years and making little changes every now and then. That's been my service as an editor. But it never grows old. It's not like, oh, I read the Gita already, what else can you show me? No, it's like you feel more appreciation for the very verses that you've read so many times before. You never read it in that same way, or you had an experience where that just comes out, and it's Krishna's word, so it's intrinsically attractive. That's what Krishna's name means. So then he's going to change gears here and start to explain. Which one? We read 11, right? Yeah. So now he's going to change gears, and he's going to explain how he's pervading everything and sustaining everything. And there's really some important verses coming up, like 15. We'll get to that next week, describing how he's in everyone's heart and all knowledge and remembrance and forgetfulness are coming from him. Okay, let's see. I think we can do one more, though, unless there's some question or discussion. We did 11, right? Yeah. Okay. 12. Yada dittikatam tejo jagadbhasayate kilam yachandamasi yachagnau tattejo viddimamakam. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Purport. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness, lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and he is giving herewith the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole universe. There are different universes, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in each universe there is only one sun. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10.21, the moon is one of the stars, nakshatrana mahang shashi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff, and they set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. So there's so much of this we'll find in the 10th chapter, some in the 9th chapter. It begins in the 7th chapter, where Krishna is encouraging Arjuna, who was a little discouraged in the 6th chapter because he couldn't really follow the process Krishna was outlining. He gave him Ashtanga Yoga in summary. Go to a secluded place, you sit like this, and this is the hard part, I can never do it. Look at the tip of the nose, I can do it for about 3 seconds. But you have to do it constantly. I don't know how to do that. And so, after all of that, Arjuna said, I can't do it. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridham. The whole idea is through these processes, pranayama, he mentioned everything, it's control the mind. Get control of that mind, which can be the friend or the enemy. Uncontrolled mind is the worst enemy. So after all of that, Arjuna said, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridham. The mind is so restless and powerful, it's like trying to control the wind. I can't do it. Dasyaham nigraham manye bhayavivatu dushkaram. Impossible. So Krishna encouraged him, yes, it's difficult, but it's possible through practice, Okay. So, but what if I fail? So he said, I'm going to be like a riven cloud. I gave up my material life to become a yogi, but I failed at that. Now I can't, what? He says, no. If you may not be 100% successful, but in the next life, Shuchinam Shimatam Gehe Yoga Brashta Vijayate. That you'll be born in a pure family or a family of yogis, and you'll continue your practice. So don't worry. But Arjuna's not so sanguine about it, he's not so hopeful. So Krishna says, don't worry. Yogi nama visarvesham magate nantaratmana shuddhavam vajate yomam same yuktatamamata. Those who are always thinking me with great love and faith, they are the best yogis. Oh, thank God. Because Krishna was Arjuna's best friend. We call it best friend. So he's already there. But then for all the rest of us, and for Arjuna, the next verse says, well, now I'm going to show you how you can have your mind attracted to me naturally without performing severe austerities. Maya saktamana parta yogam yujamana asankshayam samangvam yata tati tak shanu. And Prabhupada focuses on that last word, shanu, which means hear from me. It's a whole process of hearing and chanting, which anyone can do. No one can... anyone, anywhere, anytime can chant Hare Krishna and listen. That's how it begins. And then he describes the different material energies, how they're earth, water, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, ego. And above those, there's this apara prakriti. There's the para prakriti, transcendental energy of the soul himself. And then he starts describing, and when you rasoham apsakonte, I'm the taste of water, I'm the light of the sun and the moon, just like here. I'm the taste of water, I'm the light of the sun and the moon, I'm the ability in man, I'm the original fragrance of the earth. All these things that we experience just by living, if you connect them to Krishna, you remember this instruction from Bhagavad Gita, then the whole world will be an instance where you can become Krishna conscious. It's a natural process. So that's what he's going to do now for a few verses, and then we'll come to text 15, which we'll get to next week. But we have time for one little poem. Okay,
I'll do a couple of excerpts from the Keval Ashtaka. So this is my favorite verse. It's 8 verses about the holy name, and he says, Nikshvase nihivishvaso kada rudho bhavishyati kirtane mata balyad harer namaiva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or we're in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly, the holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. So to get to that point of constant chanting is not so easy, but it's a nice goal to have in this life, and if we fail, we can succeed in the next life. And then one other little short one. It's a one-liner. You can all memorize this one. I beg to be blessed by the best of the bliss-filled boys of Vrindavan Dham. I beg to be blessed by the best of the bliss-filled boys of Vrindavan Dham. When the curtains open, you can say that. There's the best of the blissful boys. They're standing there. It's Krishna. He's Krishna. Okay, and on that auspicious note, thank you very much for listening. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Now we'll arrange for kirtan.